Hello and welcome, brave adventurers and fellow Gauls, to a journey that will take us through the heart of one of the most legendary comic book universes ever created. Today, my friends, we delve into the epic world of Asterix and Obelix, those Gaulish heroes who've not only been the pride of France, but also the stars of countless video games. From the leafy village of indomitable Gauls to the sprawling expanse of the Roman Empire, we'll explore how these lovable characters have leaped from the pages of the comic books onto our screens. Join me as we traverse the various eras of gaming, from the pixelated adventures on early platforms to the stunningly immersive experiences of modern times. So grab your helmets, grab your stash, and let's go on an epic adventure through the Asterix and Obelix games. In the mid-20th century, amidst the pages of a comic book, a Gaulish village came to life, and with it, two legendary characters, Asterix and Obelix. Before we look into their video games, let's trace their historical journey from creation to the enduring legacy that they've left behind.
Accroche-toi, Getafix!
Cours, Asterix! Cours!
In the year of 1959, two creative minds, René Goscinny and Albert Uderzo, embarked on a groundbreaking endeavor. On October the 29th of that year, the first appearance of Asterix and Obelix graced the pages of Pilot magazine. Goscinny's idea was ingenious: a small Gaulish village resisting Roman rule thanks to a magic potion. Asterix, a clever and resourceful warrior, and Obelix, his burly yet kind-hearted friend, emerged as the central characters. In the 1960s saw the rise of Asterix and Obelix's popularity. Their humorous adventures, intricately woven into historical settings, captivated readers' imaginations. The duo's first standalone album, Asterix et de Gaule, was released in 1961. As the comics gained momentum, translations introduced Asterix and Obelix to a global audience. Their unique blend of history, satire, and humor resonated across cultures and languages. However, tragedy struck in 1977 when René Goscinny passed away. Despite this loss, Albert Uderzo continued their legacy both as a writer and an artist, ensuring the characters' adventures persisted. The legacy of Asterix and Obelix extended beyond comics. Animated films, video games, theme parks, and merchandise turned them into cultural icons, transcending the realm of mere literature. With Uderzo's passing in 2020, the duo's legacy was further entrusted to new authors. Their stories continue to be crafted with respect for the original creators, keeping the spirit of the Gaulish resistance alive. And so, the tale of Asterix and Obelix, born in the minds of Goscinny and Uderzo in 1959, lives on. From a small Gaulish village to a worldwide phenomenon, their adventures remind us that history can be both educational and entertaining, and that the bonds of creativity can endure for generations. For this part, we'll be looking at all the games released from 1983 till 1989, starting with Asterix. First game we're talking about is Asterix on the Atari 2600. It is a playful and whimsical retro gaming experience that brings the beloved Gaulish warrior Asterix into the pixelated world of the Atari 2600 console. However, this unique game is actually not an Asterix game. This is a Taz the Tasmanian Devil game. Due to Taz not being as popular in Europe, the game company decided to reskin the Tasmanian Devil for the Atari 2600 into Asterix for the Atari 2600. In this quirky adaptation, players control Asterix as he navigates through a series of intricate mazes, evading Roman soldiers and unpredictable wild boars. The game mechanics involve maneuvering Asterix through pathways, collecting Roman helmets, wild boars, and even golden laurel wreaths for extra points. Asterix's distinctive personality does not shine through due to the old graphics, however, we can excuse that for the time. With its simple yet engaging gameplay, Asterix on the Atari 2600 offers a lighthearted and amusing take on the adventures of the Gaulish warrior. The game's pixelated graphics and charmingly limited animations add a nostalgic touch, reminiscence of the early days of video gaming. This crossover of Asterix and the Atari 2600 captures the spirit of fun and creativity, providing a unique experience that combines Gaulish wit with the whimsy of classic gaming. The next game we're going to be looking at is Obelix for the Atari 2600. Now, Obelix is a 1983 video game developed and published by Atari for the Atari 2600 and is centered on the characters of Asterix and Obelix. In this game, the player controls Asterix while Obelix marches back and forth at the top of the screen, carrying a menhir on his back. The player must temporarily stun Roman soldiers and centurions so that Obelix can throw a menhir at to kill them. If the menhir misses, the stunned Roman may wake up, in which case the player can either attempt to escape a lower level in the game or drink a magic potion to escape through the enemy's shoulders. Now, this game was released shortly after a similar game called Asterix, and it was also developed on the same license. Looking at a review in the February 1984 edition of a German magazine, Telematch rated the game's graphics as a good to satisfactory and praised the sound, but also found the game overly similar to the then recently released 2600 game of Asterix. People would find enjoyment in playing the game, and a review in the January-February edition of the French magazine Tilt was generally positive about the game and complimented the graphics. Now, personally, I have not played this game, and even looking at the graphics, I hardly understand it. However, it does seem like Asterix and Obelix was active on the Atari 2600. Now, for our next game, we have a bit of a strange one. Ooh. Asterix et la Potion Magique. Of course, we have no translation. This is a game that only came out in Europe. And Asterix et la Potion Magique is a side-scrolling action game produced by Cocktail Vision for the Amstrad CPC, the PC, the Thomson MO5, and the Thomson TO in the year 1986. But why is this game so weird? First off, this game was released multiple times over different years. First in 1985 for the PC-DOS, in 1986 for the Thomson MO5, in 1986 again for the Thomson TO, and then again in 1988 for the Amstrad CPC 464. Now, you might be wondering, there's nothing spooky about that, but what is spooky is that all the information that we have found says that the game has been released for the PC-DOS in 1985. However, there has never been found a single copy of this game. No one has ever found an actual DOS version of this game, which is very, very bizarre. There are records that the game was being developed, and there are records that the game was released. However, there are no records that the game actually did make it onto the platform. Now, this game is based on the popular Asterix comic series, of course, and the game's plot is partial adaptation of the first book, Asterix the Gaul. In this story, Panoramix and Asterix are captured by Romans and are interrogated to reveal the Gaul's strength-enhancing potion recipe. However, Asterix and Panoramix send a fake list of ingredients that makes beards grow 1,000 times faster. Each player chooses its personality and travels across Europe for the ingredients, while striving to avoid the Boers and Romans. Once all items are collected, the player heads to the Roman camp and finds Panoramix to the end of the game. Now, this game is not very popular, primarily because of its frustrating controls and mechanics, and on top of that, there is a time limit which only increased by defeating Romans. So there was an added frustration and a sense of urgency every time you played this game. Now, I downloaded it real fast, and sadly my PC could not play it due to it only being able to be played if you use an older version or an older software. So I cannot speak if any of this is true. However, the fact that there is almost no information on this game makes me believe that it's true. Now, what was unique about this game as well is that this game also included a short black and white comic book that was included in the game box, and also at the same time there was a board game released that could be played alongside it. Funny how there was so much surrounding this game with a comic, with a board game, and then it just completely fell on its face, and now there is almost no information to be found about this game. Alright, for our next game, we are looking at Asterix and the Magic Cauldron. Now, Asterix and the Magic Cauldron is, of course, a video game for the Amstrad CPC, the Commodore 64, and the ZX Spectrum home computer, based on the popular, of course, French Asterix comics. Now, the game was released in 1986, but there was a very different version released for North America, which we'll get into shortly. Now, Asterix and the Magic Cauldron is just a graphical adventure game where the player takes the role of Asterix and they have to find all the pieces of the missing cauldron so that Getafix, the druid, can brew a magic potion. The game takes place in several interconnected rooms, each of which take up one screen. The game starts at the Gaulish village, as you could see in this video, and Asterix can also travel out to the forest and to the Roman camps. When Asterix encounters a wild boar or a Roman enemy, a separate fight scene will ensue. That's pretty much all the info you have on this game. It's a very traditional game. However, the most interesting fact about this game is that in North America, Asterix and the Magic Cauldron was released as Ardok the Barbarian. Now, the reason for that is because Asterix just wasn't that popular in the US, and so they decided to make it more for an American audience. Now, personally, I find this a bit weird, as Asterix wasn't very well known, so this could have been a good introduction for a lot of the younger audiences in America to actually get to know the character. But I'm guessing with Conan the Barbarian being quite popular there, they figured a barbarian would sell better than a little Gaul soldier. Now on to our next one, which is Asterix und Obelix, the Odyssey. Now, of course, as German for Asterix and Obelix, the Odyssey. This is quite a bizarre type of experience among all the Asterix games we're going to be talking about in this series. It was developed by only one person and published by Mark D and Technic Studio. It's a free game that came along with the April edition of a German C64 magazine in 1986. Now, note that I said a German magazine. This game is only in German and could only play it in Germany. This as well is the reason why I don't have any experience playing this, or I can't give you any personal opinion on the game. Now, what is interesting is that any type of information about this game was only mentioned as well in that specific magazine. It had one page dedicated just for this game. The game itself is a typical text-based adventure and was released only on the Commodore 64 console. The game was based on the comics Asterix and the Black Gold, and pretty much just repeats its story, where the goal is for Asterix to travel to Mesopotamia and defy all dangers on the way, and then find some rock oil. The gameplay itself is very simple. All the player needs to do is read the text on screen and choose from available options on what to do and proceed next in the storyline. The player has the option to write entire sentences from the available options, but shortcuts also work. Directions such as south and northwest, however, must be typed in as shortcuts. The game itself contained about 48 rooms, some of which didn't show any difference in visuals, which could cause the player to get lost easily. The inventory as well was only limited to 5 items, but bugs were found in many of the versions. The player will face different situations in the game where they will meet enemies that will try to kill them, and if you die, you start from the beginning like a good old classic video game. This is about all the information I found on this game. It's very interesting to see, ladies and gentlemen, that back in those days, games were just released on a freaking magazine, or how I remember them is that games were released in, for example, a cereal box. Now let's move on to the next one. So for our next game, and our next to last game in this very first part of the video, we got Asterix and the Magic Carpet, released in 1987 for the Commodore 64, the Amiga 500, the Atari ST, and the PC running DOS, and then again it got released in 1988 as Asterix Scheherazade for the Amstrad CPC. Now, please note these are the same game. The Asterix Scheherazade, the French version, was just released on the Amstrad CPC 1 year later. Now, in Asterix and the Magic Carpet, it is basically based on the 28th volume of the series, and the Magic Carpet starts as a graphical adventure game where the player chooses a character on the screen with a cursor and selects what he/she should say. A typical point-and-click text-based adventure game. Now, occasionally there will be a Pac-Man-like mini-game where Asterix has to defeat legionnaires or wild boars. Now, that is pretty much it. The general approach is to catch an enemy's attention, run away, and hide behind Obelix, who will defeat the enemy, and that is all the information you can find about this. I could find that it was very well received back when it came out. The graphics were well received for the time, and that is it. Very short section here, ladies and gentlemen. However, sadly with these older games, it is a lot harder to find good information. Alright, for our final game in the early platforms, we have arrived at Asterix Operation Getafix, a game released by Cocktail Vision in 1989 and was released for the Amiga 500, the Atari ST, and the PC. Now, there is actually not much information to find about this game, barely. I couldn't even find the plot of the game. However, I do know the plot of the comic book, which is that Obelix, by accident, crushes Getafix with a menhir and basically making Getafix lose his memory. Now, because he doesn't know how to make the secret potion anymore, Asterix and Obelix go across the globe to find as many ingredients as they can before the Roman Empire invades. Now, even if you look at the background of this game, there's this evil wizard. I have no clue who he is. I don't remember the comic that much, but that's the least I could find. And from what we can see from the game, it is an action-adventure game where the player goes around trying to collect ingredients. Personally, I do like the olden style, the olden sound effects, of course, but you can find them in many games. And from what I could see by critics, the game was medium received. It has an average score on a site called Moby Games, where I could find a little bit of information, where the average critic score is 55%. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is literally all I could find for Asterix Operation Getafix. Now let's move on to the next part. Alright guys, so that was it for the first part of our Asterix video. For our next part, we're going to be moving more to the 16-bit area with the Super Nintendo and the Sega, which as well will be more entertaining because I'll give it a more personal touch. I know this first part felt very, how to say it, more historic, you know, more of a information dump, but that is as well because personally these games just don't speak to me as much to stream or play. I mean, you have a lot of point-and-click adventures, but I played a lot of Walking Dead, for example, by Telltale. So I grew up with a lot more advanced games, and of course that doesn't mean that they're bad, but for me really I need at least the NES, you know, 8-bit and something like that to proper want to play this and stream it, because otherwise I'm going to play it for like, what, 10-15 minutes. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see the Super Nintendo and Sega games being played, you can check them out on Twitch there, or Twitch or Kick there. And of course, if you did like the video, only if you liked it, then feel free to give the video a thumbs up and leave me a comment if you played any of these games and if you knew any of those facts. I hope you all have a lovely day, and I'll see you on the next video, which will be out, I don't know, next month maybe. Takes a long time to edit these videos, so bye bye.